Fill for a minute. Filling.
Filling.
I'm full of barbecue.
I am not. I had a Zaxby's salad for dinner.
How are their salads?
Pretty good. They have a Cobb one that's not healthy, which makes it great. Tomatoes, those are healthy. Fried onions are not. Bacon is not.
What the
Lettuce
hell is a
is.
Cobb salad?
Cobb salad has, well, lettuce, usually a hard-boiled egg, cheese, and some other various components. Bacon.
Cubed ham.
Usually, although this is because it's Zaxby's, it's chicken. You can get the
Oh, okay.
chicken grilled versus fried. That would probably make it healthier.
Hmm.
I do not.
I see the words
This
Cobb salad all the time. As a DoorDasher, and I have no idea what that means.
I had never. I had my first one a couple of years ago, and until then, the image that always came to my mind was a corn cob like sitting on lettuce, and that's not at all what it is. But I didn't know. I never had one, and then somebody at work had one. I'm like, those are all the things I like to eat, and they're like, yeah, it's a cob. Have you never had one? I'm like, no. It's you know, there's nothing in the Zaxby's Cobb salad I won't eat.
And that person
Maybe
called everyone over and was like, "Hey, get a load of this guy. He doesn't know what a Cobb salad is." And they all pointed and
leave
laughed.
me alone.
Look at this idiot.
Yeah. Thanks for making me relive every second of that.
You are welcome. That's what I'm here for, buddy.
I know it is.
Ouch. So, all right, let us. Lettuce like salad. Shut up, Chewy.
Yeah, I see what you did there.
Renee's making a chicken salad right now, actually.
Ah, good for her.
So, let us begin. Here we go. I didn't check the episode number. I just added one to what was there, but I should probably do that real quick just in case.
Oh, Facebook heard me talking and served me an ad for Interstellar 5555.
Damn it, Facebook. Mike, get off of Facebook.
Yes, sir.
Just ignore the fact that Cookie Clicker is open. I'm not actually playing it. It's just open. What?
Sure.
All right, here we go. Gonna pause for impact. Oh, jam. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Manapool. This is episode 711 of Manapool, and I am your big gulp, Chewy. No?
Yeah.
Okay.
I get what you're doing. I like it.
I am joined by these other 711 things.
Hey, I'm Brian. I'm the lead rambler and tangent master of the group, and I guess it's time to fuel up. That's what I got.
Is that a 711 thing?
Is it not a convenience store?
I mean, yeah, but I didn't know if you were
I
going
don't
for
know
like
the
an
last
actual.
time I've ever been to a 7-Eleven. Okay, I'm gonna rewind and say, and that's where I learned how to shoot like Marty McFly.
Wow.
Mike, I'm the rules guy and the game lore guy, and yes, I'm one of the people who would actually buy one of those little hot dogs from the rollers.
Wow. And you just admit that freely, not under torture or anything. That's amazing.
Nope, not ashamed.
And I'm Dirk, the self-proclaimed greenest man alive and moral compass of the group. And I, unfortunately, am just the poor schmuck who's filling up on gas. and just pays at the pump and just says, "That's all I needed," and just keeps rolling on.
You don't even go in and buy a hot dog off of the rollers?
Nope.
That's terrible, Dirk.
I know.
Yeah. 7-Elevens aren't terribly common around here. There's one here in Kernersville, but that's weird.
Yeah, there's one that's in Burlington. So
Yeah,
that's the closest one I've seen.
Sheets are a lot more common here.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
We've got a lot of Sheets. There is a convenience store in Pennsylvania called Wawa, WAWA,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and they are such an institution that when I visited Carrie's family the first couple times and people said we're going to Wawa, they did not understand why I was like, what are you talking about? Because they just grew up with it. And I'm like, I'm sorry, did you just say you were going to Wawa? Because it was the opposite reaction for me. I never heard of it in my daggone life. So telling someone you're going to the Wawa sounded like something that might get you institutionalized in my head.
Or it sounds like bathroom code.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
Or,
I
you
gotta
know,
go
like-
to the Wawa so I can wee-wee.
Yeah, I was about to say it's kind of like baby talk. It's like, you go to the Wawa?
Yeah, I have a cousin who has like a Wawa problem. I'm like, isn't it just a gas station? She was like, well, I can't say what she said, but she was like, you shut your face. I was like, okay. Anyway, that's actually not what we're here to talk about this episode.
No, we're here to talk about Piggly Wiggly.
Which we also don't have around here.
No, we don't.
We
What
have
are we here to
Food
talk about,
Lion.
Chewy? Yeah, we do have Food Lion.
Lion. Which apparently, if you don't know, Food Lion sounds really stupid. But because I grew up with it, the Food Lion, the grocery store, Food Lion. Like, did you say Food Lion? Yeah. Anyway.
Duh.
So I'm not entirely sure why, and I assure you this was not my idea, although it sounds like it would have been. As you probably have been able to tell already, since you are either watching the stream or watching the YouTube video or listening to the episode, we're talking about Castlevania. And again, this wasn't my idea, although it probably should have been. I don't remember which of you. It was either Brian or Dirk or a combination of the two.
It was a combination of the two.
I was about to say neither one. I can't claim any.
Dirk can claim a decent amount of this one, maybe like at least 15%.
Mike was just
Probably much
silent.
higher.
We were pretty sure Mike was dead at the time.
We were deciding what to talk about, and this was actually before this week. Dirk mentioned, so some time ago we had a discussion about the Kingdom Hearts franchise. Chewy had just finished the first Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah,
so
except we
kinda had
didn't. We talked about the first game and like a couple of
Okay.
hints about the others, which confused me.
true.
It was like, yeah, we could do like we did for Kingdom Hearts, and I was like, what? Talk about the first game? What?
Dirk kind of like mentioned that we could do that, but go more in depth and do that with another game series or something. And a light bulb went off in my head, and I said Castlevania, because if we expound on that and we don't just talk about the games themselves, but also their influence in other media, not only does that let me talk about the awesome Netflix series, it also lets me talk about Captain N. And any topic that lets me talk about Captain N is at least an idea.
Ah, yes,
Push
the
my
game
phone.
master.
Yes.
Remember
Mike, you
watching
okay?
that. So that means the next one will be Mega Man.
I was going to go Kid Icarus, but sure.
That'll be a short episode.
About to say.
I've actually never played any Kid Icarus game.
Yeah,
so-
I was gonna say I've played like a couple minutes of the first game, and I was like, no, I'm good. So, okay,
Right.
Castlevania is
Ca-
a Konami game series, which is why nothing new has come out in like a decade.
I was going to say there
re-releasing the
hasn't
old
really
stuff.
been a whole lot.
Yeah, they have gotten really good about re-releasing old stuff. I wish they would do even better. But we'll get into that.
Yeah.
Uh,
So yeah, go ahead.
okay. Castlevania started on the NES. That's the Nintendo Entertainment System. Back in '86. Oh my god.
Yeah. Technically, okay, so not to be that guy, but I was doing some research for the episode. It was released in Japan in '86 and North America in '87.
Yeah.
I'm a nerd.
And it's okay, it's a platformer. Let's see, how do you describe Castlevania? So it's an 8-bit
Side scroll.
side-scrolling platformer where you have no control over your character once you jump. Like, your jumping is very deliberate. And your weapon, which is a whip, has, for the time, a very long wind-up. Like, unlike, like Contra, where you push a button and a bullet shoots out. You push a button and he throws the whip back and then whips forward. So you have to be very deliberate playing Castlevania. Castlevania is the Dark Souls of the NES.
It is tough. It is tough for anyone that looks back. If you've watched, if you either played it, or for you youngins, if you've watched it on the YouTube and whatnot, or Twitch or whatever, it is hard. And maybe a couple levels into it, you're like, I think I got this, and you'll hit something like either a platforming area over a pit with Medusa heads flying at you, and you hit one and you die. Or you get to the dungeon level and you just die because the dungeon is horrible. Or somehow you make it to the end of the dungeon level and you have to fight Frankenstein and an Igor at the same time, and you die. And that's assuming you make it that far and you don't die in level 2. To this day, I've never beaten the first one. I've gotten as far as death, which sounds ironic because, yes, I've met my death many, many, many times, but I got as far as the Grim Reaper boss, and I have never beaten that boss. Ever. Not once.
And apparently he's really easy if you know how to cheese him. I have never gotten to the Grim Reaper, so... So okay, so the word horror game means something different now than it did then.
It does.
Like, now that means a game that will scare you or jump scare you or disturb you greatly and make you question life and all things about it.
Yeah.
But back then,
I'm thinking
horror meant has bats and skeletons and vampires in it.
Yeah. I would say now the modern version of a horror game is going to be something in the spectrum of either like Resident Evil or Eternal Darkness, which I know Eternal Darkness is not new anymore. I'm old, shut up, but it's the reference I have, right? Like Eldritch horror, kind of like mess with your head kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And this is something where I guess Diablo in some versions could be a horror game because devils and people being flayed alive and you go to hell and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, like Diablo is a horror game in the same way that Castlevania is, meaning it's got horror-y things in it, but it is not itself trying to scare you.
Right.
And
I agree.
Yeah, like it had levels. You start the level, you walk to the left, sorry, you walk to the right, and you
Hmm.
kill enemies and try not to die or fall into pits, and then you fight a boss at the end, and then you go to the next level. Yay!
Well, and I will say you kind of hit on something there without I think even meaning to. In Mario, to compare it to another platformer, like the iconic platformer of Super Mario Brothers, you always moved left to right every level. And if you tried to go left, I'm sorry, if you tried to go back left, there's a hard wall. You could not. Castlevania not only had some areas where you went left, like at the beginning of the stage or after like a small going through a door or something, it might put you in an area where you go left. But it actually had areas where you could go upstairs, and the screen had a part where you could be under the stairs and continue to the right, or you could go up the stairs and the path might go to the left. So it was still linear. In the first one, there were no hidden paths. You're not gonna like find a secret exit to another level, but you actually had a couple paths to go on the screen depending on the screen. Does that make sense? I hope I'm not being confusing. I wish I
Sure.
could like point
I
at
don't
a
think there are any,
screen.
I don't think there are any branching paths, were there?
Not in the first one, no.
No, not true branching paths, but like even in the first area after you enter the castle, after almost no time at all, there are stairs in front of you, and you can walk up them, and there's like a platform in midair that it puts you out on, or you can walk under it, and either way, the progress continues to the right, and eventually you'll go back down and they join up again. So. But I
Sure.
did appreciate in the first one how, again, it's linear, but even on the NES, the different levels looked different. In Mario, there were a couple backgrounds that might change. There were a couple times where I'm like, oh, cool, this looks like it might be nighttime because the screen is darker. Or you might go underwater. But the textures were all pretty much the same, and it was repeated over 8 worlds. In Castlevania, the different backgrounds and textures really helped each area feel a little more unique. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So that's, and you were Simon Belmont in the original.
Mhm.
You were out to slay Dracula because video game. Although I
I
always did think it
remember
was funny that you were actually slaying Dracula, a character from literature.
Yeah. I
rather
remember
than
in the original in the original user manual, back that thing that we when we used to get the physical manual,
yeah.
I don't think they actually called him Dracula. I think they called him the Count. And it had this really interesting tagline to uh this was 87. So like 6-year-old, 7-year-old me, which was like it had some storyline about how ages ago your ancestor killed the count and put a stake in his heart. Dot dot dot. But he didn't die. And I'm like, "Whoa, that's cool." It's the little things you remember, right? So, a little bit of a hook there.
Oh
But I
God, it
think
does say
definitely did it say Dracula?
to destroy forever the curse of the evil count.
Aha. Definitely
Really?
by Castlevania 2, they were using Dracula. It's also in the name
But
of
that's
2.
in the English localization
Mhm.
because the name of Castlevania in Japan is like Akumajo Dracula.
Yeah. It- Yeah, I'm talking about the English one. I understand they originally, but because this is what I played, so just let me know if I say anything that's incorrect. It happens every now and then.
Yeah. And Akumajo Dracula
Uh,
means roughly like demon castle Dracula, something like that.
yeah. Something else I want to mention about the first game that then made its way into the other games, a bit of a subversion of expectations. Not,
The
I feel
damn
like that gets thrown
hearts.
around a. Yes, you knew exactly where I was going. So, in an ordinary video game, if you collect a heart, what do you expect to see happen?
Health go up.
You regain health go up. You may or may not expect to do the same if you find chicken just lying around. You might be like, well, I get it. I eat it. You don't expect to then be able to throw your axe another time. That was that to me was always. I mean, all it takes is a couple minutes into the game, and you're like, oh, but still. And again, I want to be clear. Like, I feel like subversion of expectations has become such a phrase these days. It's almost gotten a bit tired. Like, people, movie studios, video game studios do it so much. It's like, okay, yeah, we get it. But
Yep.
this was more of just like a minor thing.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
this wasn't a subversion because subversion implies intent. This is just what they chose to do.
It is what they choose.
The
And
language of video games was not set.
no, I
back
mean, this
then.
was one of the first iconic video games, but it's something that has remained is also what I love. Now, I have not played every Castlevania game, so it's possible others used hearts in different ways, but that was kind of they created that system and they stuck with it at least for a while. So
Yeah.
hearts.
So I had I had the first three Castlevanias on NES, so I've played this one a lot. Although when I was a kid, I sucked at it. I never even made it to death. How about you guys? Any of you played this one? I know Brian has, but was
Yeah,
that when you were
the
a
other
kid
two.
or what?
That was when I was a kid. Rented it first. I don't know that I ever bought it as a kid. And then it was released through the Wii store and the DS store, and on my 3DS I bought it. And I'm like, I'm a grown up now. I can beat this. No. I'm kind of like looking at my 3DS in the corner, and I'm like, maybe again sometime. But how about you other two guys? Did you ever play one?
I
See,
never. Go ahead.
oh, I was gonna say, I don't think I knew anyone who had a Nintendo console and had Castlevania 1. So my only experience with it is playing a little bit of it here and there on like emulators later. But yeah, it was never to the point where I even got past the first level. It's just like, man, this game is neat, but also hard. I'll play something else instead. Um, and because of that, I'm certain it was multiple years between the first time I played it and when I finally realized what collecting the hearts did. But yeah, most of my experience, I'm pretty sure, is just a couple of DS games that I played extensively much later on.
And you, Dirk, as far as the
Um,
first one.
I had a friend who I watched play it, and I may have like tried a little bit to play it, and then like died a couple times, and was like, yeah, I'm. So my experience is incredibly limited. But like I said, I did see people play it and thought, oh, that's a pretty cool premise for a game and everything. Um, I get the best. I had the same experience with the second Zelda game, where I saw people play it, and I tried to play it, and realized I was terrible at it, and it was like, there's other games I want to play.
Dirk, you weren't terrible at the second Zelda game. No one is terrible at the second Zelda game. The second Zelda game, um, hmm,
It's terrible.
it's
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 a very hard and frustrating game.
that's a discussion for
Yeah.
another time.
Much like Castlevania 2, it's not that it's a bad game, it's that some of the design decisions were awful.
I would say in both games they were a bit ahead of their time, but the decisions they made to try to implement these ideas were faulted. But
Yeah.
that actually, unless we have more we want to say about one, I was gonna say I've got more to say about 2 because 2, which was, hold on, where's my notes? Simon's Quest. For some reason, I thought it was Curse of Dracula. That's actually number 3. This one was the first one that I owned, and I played the heck out of it, and I beat, and it's weird. Maybe that's the curse of the number 2, Zelda 2, Castlevania 2. Even Mario Brothers 2 is very different from Mario 1.
Whether you're talking about the real one or the fake one.
I mean, both in their own way. I think, especially with earlier video game properties, there was maybe this urge to like try to redefine and say what else video games could be, and the developers wanted to explore different avenues, and sometimes they worked, and sometimes it just didn't feel like the same series at all, like in Simon's Quest. So,
Oh
in
yeah,
Simon's
I feel like I
Quest-
should point
Go-
out real quick. The first Castlevania takes
ahead.
place in 1691, and Castlevania 2 takes place in 1698. Just throwing that out there.
Sure. I did not make a record of when these took place, so thank you. So Castlevania 1, as we said, was a side scroller with limited combat, like the whip combat and jumping. Uh, Castlevania 2 was a side scroller with whip combat and somewhat limited jumping. So you might go, it's the same kind of game. You'd be wrong.
It's an
Whereas-
open world NES game.
It is, and that's kind of crazy, but it was a mess. I have seen a lot of fan reproductions or remakes of 2, and some of them look great. But I think that's because a lot of people see the promise of 2. So whereas in 1, you had stages, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, etc. You don't have those in Castlevania 2. You start in a town, and if you go to the screen to the right, you're in the woods, and if you go to the screen to the left, I think you might be in a swamp or at a lake or something, and you still stay going right or going left, and there is some vertical movement with platforms, and especially in the towns you go up and down. And then over the course of the world, you'll uncover 5 mansions, and those mansions are basically the game's dungeons. And what you're trying to do are find each mansion has an orb, and you put a stake into the orb. Vampires, right? And you get a part of Dracula, because this is story-wise, this is still Simon Belmont, one of the only games to actually have the same Belmont as the previous game, and we'll get into why that is. And once you get the 5 pieces of Dracula, then you need to go back to the site of the original Dracula castle, Castlevania, and to put an end to the curse that Dracula inflicted Simon with upon his defeat. Cool concept, really interesting idea for an open world. So, and it even had a day-night system, which kind of, looking back at that, Zelda did not have a day-night system until Ocarina of Time on the N64. So these are all interesting ideas. I've played it. Chewy, did you play 2?
Oh yeah.
Mike or Dirk, did you guys play 2?
I did not.
Maybe like 5
Okay.
minutes in my life. No.
So Chewy, what went wrong or what didn't work with Simon's Quest?
The localization was I can't say that on the show. Was a god awful mess.
Yeah.
They decided, like the localization made some of the villagers just say gibberish.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Like one of
Straight
them
up.
tells you to
Oh.
like beware of the Death Star.
Yeah, that's the famous one. Well, one of the famous ones. Some of the others even give you incorrect information.
Yeah,
like what they
except
say.
the incorrect information is such garbled English that it you don't even know if it's incorrect information. Like it's all just
Yeah,
bad.
yeah. It's and there are parts of this game that are not intuitive. There
Yeah.
is an area that to progress to the next part of the world, you have to butt up right against the wall and crouch down for
While
like
holding a
30
certain crystal.
seconds while holding a certain crystal. And how do you figure this out? Nintendo Power.
Yeah.
I kid you
I
not.
I think
No one tells you this.
I think in the Japanese version it's fairly clear. Like
Hmm.
there is an
But it's
NPC somewhere that will explain that to you, but in the American version it's no. Nintendo
no,
Power.
no.
Like
Yeah,
you've got to know somebody that has a subscription to Nintendo Power, or you've got to call the hotline because the Nintendo Power helpline was a thing.
Hmm.
yep.
Uh, and it's all just silly.
Yeah.
Like even Howard and Nestor did a bit on it. Howard and Nestor was a comic, like a single page, sometimes two pages, like comic strip that ran in Nintendo Power, and they would always work in like hints for games in
Yep.
amongst the jokes in each issue.
Hmm.
And yeah, in that one, it shows Nestor dressed as Simon getting sucked up by the tornado and taken away. Because that's what happens. You equip whichever crystal, you get to the cliffs, and you kneel for like 5 seconds, and then a tornado comes and picks you up and takes you away, like you were Link blowing on the whistle,
Or Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz.
or Dorothy.
Yeah.
And
But if you
that's
don't,
like
yeah.
the angry video game nerd. I think his first video, maybe his second, but I think his first was Castlevania 2. And like, of course, he was playing, and still is to this day. The poor guy. He's playing an exceptionally angry nerd what plays video games, so he played it up to be this is awful. And I mean, it's bad, but it's reputation is mostly blown out of proportion. Like
Sure.
it's just weird and confusing. It's not like god awful terrible.
No.
Like the thing I see
His
people complain about the most that I don't understand is the day night cycle. Whenever night hits, uh, everything freezes and it pops up a little window where it spells out what a horrible night to have a curse, and then it sits there for a second, and then that goes away, and it turns to night, so all the enemies are harder, and all the villages are full of zombies now instead of townspeople. But like everyone complains, "Oh my god, those pop-ups take so long," and I'm like, "What sort of millennial entitlement is this? Like it's a few seconds, Jesus."
That's it right there. So,
Oh
but also like,
no. Sorry, I'm gonna have to mute for a second because the arm holding my microphone is about to let go of the desk again. So, by all means, keep going.
but I was gonna be like, but nobody could hear us. But no, they just can't hear him. But yeah, I do. As far as the angry video game nerd, like, I mean, that's the character he created is literally that. First time I watched some of those episodes, it really kind of turned me off because he uses a lot of crude language, and I'm not that prudish, but it was distracting. But I've kind of really liked some of his reviews, so every now and then I see if he's done anything lately, and he's still going. But yeah, this game has a reputation for being awful, and it's not awful, but there are problems with it. The loading time for the day night is not horrible. It's just something you have to sit through. Uh, Not knowing where to go is probably a bigger problem. Like not knowing, like, and not being able to figure it out intuitively. Um, in the dungeons, the mansions or other areas, there can be sections of the floor that are actually just pits, and there's no way to tell unless you throw holy water every second while inching forward. You're probably going to find a pit when you're, walking over what appears to be solid ground, and then you die or get sent back to the beginning of the level. So stuff like that can be frustrating, but that was in a lot of early games. Is we want the players. Go ahead. This so in Castlevania 2, you still have sub weapons. I don't think they actually used um hearts. I think actually
Mm.
once you unlocked a sub weapon, you could just use it forever. Hearts were currency that you could use, and you had to buy some items. But when you used a holy water, it would, I think it made, didn't it make this like tinkling, like glass breaking sound? Um, but if you used it a lot, that sound would get really weird really quick. And you really did have to use the holy water a lot. Um, again, this is more of an issue with early video games. Is there were a couple of bosses other than, surprise, surprise, Dracula at the end when he survived. I remember there was Carmilla and Death appeared once again, but both Carmilla and Death showed up in mansions in the room right before an orb. And the way the video game code worked is you didn't really have to beat them. I think at least one of them did drop a sub weapon you couldn't get otherwise, like the golden knife. So you maybe had to, but you didn't have to that time. You could just try to duck past them and go to the orb. But if you did stay and you fought them and you beat them, you're like, yes, and you go and you smash the orb and you get Dracula's fingernail or whatever. Yes, that was a thing, or his rib. And you went back to the other room, that sub boss was back because that's how the code was when you enter that room, spawn that boss. But both of them, if I recall, were very high up in the air, so you could just be like, nah, and just run to the other side.
Yeah,
You did not
Camilla
have to
especially,
fight them again.
you could just, as long as you just keep holding to the right, you would just keep on going.
Yeah. So I think it was not a horrible game. It had some issues, but some of those issues were just early video game development, and there were some strong bones there.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
you
it
could
was
tell
literally a super early Metroidvania because like
it
it was an
was.
open world, but there were some places you just couldn't go until you got whatever thing and came back.
Mm.
Yeah, that's very true. But you could tell that they probably got a lot of negative feedback about it
Yeah.
because you know what they took from two when they made three? I don't think a thing. Three,
I
it.
so before we move to 3, when
Go ahead, please.
downloaded, well, when I was deciding I was going to do several years ago now, I did a taste test stream where I emulated and played all of the Castlevania games I could get a hold of because I was doing a guest spot on School of Movies that was about Castlevania. And he brought me on. He's like, oh, okay, you played the early ones. Great. And I was like, that's not good enough. So I played through like, 20, 30, 40 minutes of all of them. And when I was getting that all set up, I added 2 mods to Castlevania, well, 3. No, just 2. 2 mods to Castlevania 2. One of them was a map, like a world map, and the other one was a retranslation.
Ah, nice.
Was that it? I think that was it. Yeah. I didn't play them for very long though, but I do remember talking to someone and going, "Oh my god, I understood what you just said."
This isn't the Death Star at all.
But yeah, that was that. Haunted Castle came out the next year. That was the arcade game. that nobody really knew about here.
Oh, and according to the research that I did, the first Game Boy Castlevania The Adventure came out in 1989. So Castlevania was 1987 in America.
Yep.
2 was 1988. The Game Boy game was 1989. And then Castlevania 3 Dracula's Curse was 1990. I did not play the first Game Boy game. Actually, skipping ahead, I played the second one couple of years later when it came out. I got it for Christmas.
I had the first one. It is so bad. It stars Christopher Belmont and takes place in 1576. So before, like over 100 years before Castlevania 1 and 2. And it is not good. It's very slow and plotting, like even more so than the Castlevania games before it. It's bad on almost every level. Like when you get hit, you lose your whip power-ups. And unlike in the first 2 games, whip power-ups are extremely rare.
Yeah. The first time I ever played The Adventure was this year. So
I was going to say, was that at my house?
It was at your house. So those of you that watch the show may remember, if you remember Chewy's charity stream, he was playing video games for like 48 hours or something crazy.
Not that long, and I did 2 12-ish hour streams, I think.
I dropped by for about 3 or 4 of those hours.
Something like that.
And he was taking challenges, and one of the challenges was to play at least a little bit of every game in the Castlevania collection, which included that one. And I was like, hey, I'll try that one. And you got up to use the bathroom or whatever. And I'm like, this is so bad. Like, I like Castlevania games. I even like 2. This is so bad.
Yeah.
I don't ever want to play it again.
There were no sub-weapons. There was just the whip, and like I said, if you took damage, you lost. So your first whip upgrade made it like a Morning Star. Your second whip upgrade gave it a Fireball. But then if you took a hit, you lost that, and if you took another hit, you were back to the basic whip, and you probably weren't getting any more upgrades for the rest of the level. Maybe one.
That sounds like some ghouls and goblins nonsense.
And you move,
yeah.
Like Chewy's not kidding. You move slow, and the enemies don't.
Yeah. And at least Ghosts and Goblins is, fun while it's kicking your ass. This is not.
No, this was not.
It was one of the 8 Game Boy games that I owned in my life. And most of them were bad. This one was probably the worst.
I know we're kind of taking our time with each of these games, but these are the ones that Chewy and I like really played. When we get to some of the later ones, I'm gonna be like, because I haven't really played a lot of those. But then we get to 3.
Dracula's Curse is a masterpiece on the NES.
I rented it one time. I found it to be hard, but rewarding. Like I felt like, it's the kind of game where it pushes you to do better, but it didn't feel out of reach. But I don't have nearly as much experience with this one as I did with 1 and 2. So, Chewy, why don't you talk a little bit about what makes this game kind of unique?
So you're playing as Trevor Belmont, and this one takes place in 1476. So 200 years before the first Castlevania. Now, this is according to what's currently shown on Wikipedia. I don't actually know how many times this has changed. For a while, I thought Simon was supposed to be Trevor's, son or grandson. But with 200 years in between them, nope.
Seems unlikely.
But the neat thing about it, it had branching paths. So sometimes you'd get to the end of a level, and there would be another screen, like after you beat the boss and get the orb or whatever, and it would tally up your score and go to what would be like the map screen to show you the next level. Instead, it's a little place, a little thing where there's a path that goes straight ahead and stairs that go down or up. And whichever way that you went on that screen would determine which level you went to next. And some of them were harder than others. Some of them had companions. Because the other thing that makes Castlevania 3 really cool is that you could find other characters and you could bring one of them with you. So, like, the first one I think that you can run into is Grant. I don't know how you're supposed to say it. I always called him Grant Dynasty.
Dynasty.
His name is spelled Dynasty.
That it is.
And he was a pirate dude who was horribly nerfed in the American version. He had a tiny little knife that went like just right in front of him. But he could climb on walls and ceilings. Sometimes. He would let go at just the worst times and you plummet to your death and be like, ah! But, you know. And he only had 2 sub-weapons, which was the throwing knife and the axe. The throwing knife, in the Japanese version, was his basic weapon. So he got horribly nerfed in the American version, which is a thing that happened a lot back then because we had rental culture here. And so a lot of NES games in America are way harder than their Japanese counterparts because they didn't want people to rent the game and beat it in a weekend and take it back and then never buy the damn thing.
Yeah, it's true.
So instead of, you know, doing something else, they just make them harder. Yeah, thanks. And then there was, so if you've watched the Netflix anime, that's based loosely on, at least the first 2 seasons are based loosely on Castlevania 3. So Trevor is your main character. And then you can run in. Grant got completely excised from the show, which was somewhat annoying. He didn't even get a cameo.
I think that, I don't know if it was too hard for them to work in a pirate into the setting with the name Dynasty. I think they were probably just like, eh. There is a scene in Nocturne where a character's in a graveyard and his grave is illustrated. It's like blink and you miss it.
Well, that's something at least. Like, I kept expecting him to show up like as a cameo somewhere, you know, a 1 episode character, and nope, he's not there at all.
No.
But the other characters you can get are, which should be no surprise, again, if you've watched the Netflix show, Saifa Belnades, who the American manual referred to as a he. So I was really confused for a long time. And then Alucard. Saifa can use magic. She has a fire attack that just shoots out in front of her and does good damage. She's got an ice attack that bounces around and freezes things, I think. And then there's the lightning magic, which is busted.
How is it busted?
It's really good. It's super powerful.
Okay. I never got that far in the game, so.
And then there's Alucard, who shoots out, his basic attack is shooting out fireballs. And instead of a sub-weapon, he can turn into a bat and fly around, and which drains your hearts as if it was a sub-weapon. So those are your bonus characters. Saifa is like a glass cannon, essentially, and Alucard is your utility to just fly over things or past things. And Grant can get replaced by one of the other 2.
I mean, this is still a platformer game. It has a lot more in common with 1 than 2, right? As far as how the game plays.
From the moment-to-moment gameplay, yeah, it is way more like 1.
Yeah.
There are discrete levels and a boss at the end and blah, blah, blah.
I'm thinking of, like, how 1 played with all of the platforming and whatnot, and I can't help but feel like, yeah, being able to fly would have really helped a lot.
Yeah.
Although it doesn't make you invincible, right? So Medusa heads can still knock
Yeah.
you to your death. Yep.
I don't remember what happens when you get hit when you're a bat. I don't know if you just take damage or if there is knockback. I don't remember. It's been too long since I made it that far.
Mm,
Excuse me.
okay.
But yeah, Castlevania 3 was originally on the Famicom Disk System. So it has like more sound channels, for instance. And when it was brought over to the NES, I think 2 channels had to get cut out of the music. So as much as I love the music from Castlevania 3, that's not even the real music from Castlevania 3. These first 3 games, by the
Oh.
way, each had a song, like a track that became big. Like in
Yeah.
the first game, it's Vampire Killer.
Yep. In the second game, it is absolutely Bloody Tears.
Yeah, and Bloody Tears is one of my favorite pieces of music. Full stop. Not
It's great.
not favorite pieces of video game music, not favorite pieces of like instrumental music. No, favorite pieces of music.
Full stop.
Like it's up there with like One Winged Angel and what is it, Dancing Mad from Final Fantasy VI, the Kefka final boss music.
Yeah.
Like stuff like that. Bloody Tear. Whenever I hear Bloody Tears, I'll have to
Yeah. And then what's
And
from
then
3?
In 3, it was called The Beginning because it was a prequel. See. And if you're a fan of Castlevania at all, you can either hear those as I say them, or if you heard them, you'd be like, "Oh yeah, okay, I know that."
I'm going to have to go back and listen to the beginning, and I guarantee you 5 notes in, I'm going to know exactly what you're talking about.
Oh yeah,
I
because those 3
guarantee.
tracks get reused a lot
Yeah.
because they're great.
So then after 3 was actually the first Game Boy game that I got, Castlevania 2, Belmont's Revenge for the Game Boy. I got that one for Christmas. I played the heck out of it. It was also included in the package that Chewy got, so I also played that while we were on stream. And I beat this is one where you select, there are 4 starting castles, and each one is basically a stage. And when you beat all those, then Castlevania itself, comes out of the lake, and you go in there. I did the Crystal Palace, I think, in one go, and
Yep.
even now I'm thinking about the music to it immediately comes to mind. And I think you were watching me play this, and it was so smooth, not just compared to the first Game Boy game, but even some of the NES games. The animation was so much better. You didn't lose your whip upgrades. The only bad thing about the whip upgrade is when you got the second one, you got the fireball, but the fireball projectile was much weaker than the whip itself, so you actually had to be careful about how you used it. But it was great, and I had played the heck out of it as a kid, and looking back, I still love that game a lot.
Yeah, it is the best of the 3 Castlevania games on the Game Boy.
Thank you.
That one takes place in
Don't have-
1591. So the first Game Boy game was 1576. So what is that? 15 years later, Christopher Belmont is getting up there in age.
The story for this one, usually it's like one Belmont per generation, or according to the lore, Dracula is resurrected every 100 years. This is one where Christopher beat Dracula in the adventure. Nobody knows about it because you couldn't beat the game, but you're told about it. And then 15 years later, his son, whose name I never learned how to pronounce it, something like Soil Yu. I kid you not. Look it up.
Oh yeah.
Soil.
If I could see it written, I can't remember exactly what the name was.
I'm assuming it's in a dialect I'm simply not familiar with, but I've never been able to pronounce it. But the spirit of Dracula like possesses him. And because it's his coming of age as a Belmont, he possesses him, raises the four palaces to go ahead and resurrect Dracula, blah blah, and so Christopher must take up the whip once again. So
Soleil is
yeah, it's
what
always
Wikipedia
interesting
says.
when you have a
Soleil.
there you go.
Yeah.
I'm uncultured, so. But
So I'm guessing
it
none
was a
of
really,
you, neither of you other two played any of these.
Mm-mm.
well, we're getting to the more modern stuff next because after that, in the same year, that was 1991, same year, you know what came out?
The Super Nintendo version.
Ca- Super Castlevania 4 for the Super Nintendo. I don't know if that's also the year the Super Nintendo came out itself. I know that this was one of the early games hyped for the system because of all the Mode 7 graphics and whatnot that it used. But
I don't know if it was a launch game, but it was in the first year. So
uh,
sorry, second year in Japan. It came out. The Super Nintendo came out in 1990 in Japan, and this game released in 1991 in Japan. But still, very early.
very early. I don't want to call this a perfect game because it's not. If anything, it's almost a little easy. But this is a darn near perfect Castlevania game. If what you like is kind of the style of the early games, the side scroller, the whip action, then sorry. If you like that, this is everything you love, but I'm honestly gonna say better. I'm sure there are people out there that don't love this game as much, but it's great. It's a remake of the first Castlevania, right? So the like the
Pretty
year
much.
in the story is the same and all that. You're Simon, you're getting ready to fight Dracula,
Yeah.
but the graphics are great, and to this day, I think I've not played every Castlevania game. I don't think any game has the whip movement of this game, any other game, right?
I don't think so. Like this one, you could whip in 8 directions, whether you were standing or jumping, and you could hold the whip out by holding the attack button and flail it around.
Yeah.
But also, you could hold it out, and it would be a shield. So, like if a fireball connected with your whip while it was just hanging in front of you, it would stop the fireball.
Yep.
Like,
I
and because your
tended-
sprite was bigger, and like they lengthened the reach of the whip. Like there were no whip upgrades. You just had the whip at maximum.
No, you
strength.
start with the leather whip. You start with the leather whip. The first upgrade made it a chain whip, and then the second one made it longer.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't remember that at all.
I've played the heck out of this game. There was a time when I downloaded it for the Wii that I played it for Halloween every year.
Yeah.
Ask Sam.
Oh yeah, you do get whip upgrades. I have zero memory of the leather whip, like ever.
That's because unlike some of the Game Boy games, this game was fairly generous with the power-ups for the whip.
Must
You
have
would
been.
usually get them fairly quickly. The times when you didn't get them and you had to fight a boss with a leather whip, it was tough. That made the difficulty go up. But yeah, most of the time I did not do the whole flailing around thing because it did minimal damage,
Yeah.
but it
But
had
it was
its uses.
funny.
Yeah. Did either Dirk or Mike play Super Castlevania 4?
Go ahead, Mike.
No,
Jesus.
not this one either.
So I got the what's the Super Nintendo thing that has like 20 some games on it.
Oh yeah,
I can't think of
the
what's-
SNES Mini.
Yeah, the SNES Mini. And I did for a short period of time actually did play Super Castlevania. I tried it out. I played it a little bit, but again, it was just one of those things where there were other games on there that I wanted to play, and I was showing my kids, and then my kids took it over, and I didn't get a chance to do anything else. So
That sounds like a lot of parents' stories. And I'm sure you wanted to show them. Didn't that system have like Super Metroid on it?
yes,
And
Yeah.
Final Fantasy
as
3.
Secret of Mana, it's
6.
got a bunch of great games on it.
Yeah. So, as much as I love this game, that's a lot going on. So, you should go back and try it sometime if you ever get it back from your kids.
Hmm.
Just go ahead and ground them for no reason and just be like, I'm taking this back. I mean, I guess you don't have to ground them, but
It's more fun that way.
cover you legally. Yeah.
As your lawyer, I advise you to ground your children.
He's not wrong.
But yeah, this game is widely regarded as one of the better ones, but also really easy because, again, like your fully upgraded whip will reach across half the screen, if not more.
It's long.
And
yeah.
it's sort of, and because you can whip in all 8 directions, you sort of don't really need sub weapons as much.
No.
Because the axe that goes up in an arc, well, you could just whip up there now. So what are we even doing here?
Mm-hmm.
But because it was a Super Nintendo game, it had all the Mode 7 graphics things to show off. Like there was the rotating room and the giant boss who was actually a background tile that would get smaller with every hit.
Yep.
There was a lot of playing around with the technology.
And for the most part, it worked pretty well. So,
Yeah.
but
It's
not
really
a perfect game, but very, to me, it was fun. It wasn't even, there were some parts that were a challenge. Some of those later levels, toward the end of the game, when you are having to ascend and the spiked gear of death is chasing you, and you don't always hit the crumbling stairs just right.
good.
It can take a long time to get it right, but the game is also very generous with game overs and continues. You never have to go all the way back to the beginning of the game, so you can do it. And to me, especially when I was a kid, I was not looking as much for, oh, I want to be the one that beat this game because nobody else can do it. I wanted to just have a good time. So this one ranks pretty high to me, maybe almost because the challenge was not insane.
Yeah. So then
'Cause it's a video game. Go
Let's
ahead.
sidestep over to the Genesis,
Let's do it.
where
For
Bloodlines.
Bloodlines, I did not play Bloodlines, so that's all you.
I mean, I didn't until the taste test stream. Bloodlines is really good. It takes place way closer to now, 1917. Like in the world of Castlevania Bloodlines, like the Great War was partially started by a vampire, so that something get Dracula back.
Something get Dracula back is the plot of most Castlevanias.
Yeah. And you play as either John Morris or Eric Lacard, and you'll notice neither of those say Belmont.
What?
But John Morris is a reference to Quincy Morris from the novel.
Yep.
And John Morris is your Belmont-ish character with a whip, and Eric Lacard has a spear, and he is easy mode. And I mean that
I had not.
literally, like he's of the two, sort of like in the first Resident Evil, you could play as either Chris or Jill, and Jill made it easier, and Chris made it harder. It's like that. Eric Lacard is easier to play than John Morris. because of his big ass spear and the various. He can high jump, like do a pole vault type vertical jump with it, and if you hold the attack and like press left and right, he'll spin it all around himself to deal damage to anything close to him. Like he's easy mode.
I'm assuming, because I did not play Bloodlines, I've heard of it. This is another, less like 2, more like the others, where it's a side scroller, whippy, spear.
Yeah.
Sort of. Okay,
There are discrete levels, and you fight bosses at the end, and
gotcha.
blah 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 blah.
Don't mean to make you keep repeating it. Just part of the discussion is the gameplay, so just trying to keep an eye on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
But this one, because Nintendo had a like an exclusivity deal with the developers, like you'll notice that any game that crosses over to the or any franchise that crosses over to the Genesis has a completely different game. Like there's not a Genesis port of like Super Castlevania 4. They got to make a new game. Like Contra had, instead of a version of Contra 3 on the Genesis, they had Contra Hardcore, CORPS. And this was one of those things. But this one didn't use hearts. It used gems. So that's something, I guess.
Different item currency.
And the soundtrack was really, like, the actual pieces were really good, but the Genesis sound chip is just a nightmare.
It is.
Like, that was a point of contention with the other guest on that School of Movies episode, because I was like, I loved the composition, but I could not listen to this through the Genesis sound chip. Like, I wanted to rip my own ears off. But
And someone disagreed with you on that?
yeah, because in the UK, the Genesis was, I'm sorry, the Mega Drive was much more popular than the Super Nintendo. So at least one person was like, "What?"
I lived in a very pro Nintendo area, I guess. Almost nobody. We had a Sega Genesis, but it didn't get played a lot. So
Hey, me too. So yeah, it's really good though. Like, I highly recommend Bloodlines if you haven't played it. It's on the classics, the anniversary collection rather.
nice.
As a matter of fact, most of the games we've talked about so far have been on that. 1, 2, 3, 4, Bloodlines, and the first 2 Game Boy games are all on that collection, I'm pretty sure.
Sounds about right. I know.
Which collection?
The first one, the anniversary collection.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then then we jump over to the PC Engine, or the TurboGrafx 16, I guess, if you're nasty.
Mm-hmm.
Although it never came to America, so it's the PC Engine. And we get Rondo of Blood, which is, in my estimation, the pinnacle of the Classicvanias. Like the side-scrolling platformer with, discrete levels. Rondo is it. This game is brilliant.
I'm curious to hear why you think so.
Because the gameplay is spot on. Richter has sub-weapons, but you can also expend more of your hearts to do what's called an item crash, which is like a bigger attack.
Like the holy water rain or something?
Exactly, yeah. And he's
Is that
got a
where this came
backflip,
from?
and
Okay.
he can run. And his whip starts off fully. There are no whip upgrades. You just have, it's just the whip. And the bosses are all good. He controls like butter. And it had anime cutscenes, which doesn't really interest me, but
I mean, it's a sign of progress of the technology, yeah.
yeah. But we didn't get an English version of Rondo of Blood until the PlayStation Portable in 2007.
Do we count Dracula X?
No,
Or
because
do you
that's a
think
different
it's-
game.
Okay.
We'll get to that in a second. But Rondo is
Sure.
The PlayStation Portable. The PSP got a game called the Dracula X Chronicles, which is it's a remake of Rondo, but with like 3D graphics. I think it's hideous myself.
I tried renting Dracula X a couple times. I think at least twice. And I had difficulty getting past the first level, and it wasn't for me, I guess.
Yeah, well, we're not there yet.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
But yeah, this remake of Rondo called the Dracula X Chronicles had as hidden collectibles in the game the original version of Rondo and the original version of Symphony of the Night, which is ridiculous. Now, if you have a PlayStation, then you can get oh crap, what is it called? Requiem. Castlevania Requiem, which is Symphony of the Night and Rondo of Blood. Just that it's a collection of those two games that came out in 2018 and is still PlayStation exclusive.
Mm.
So of course, the two games that I want to play the most in the Castlevania series are not available on Steam.
Of course.
But yeah, Dracula X is it's not, so everyone hates Dracula X like in the Castlevania community, and I don't think it's fair because they're like, well, it's an inferior version of Rondo of Blood. No, it's a different game based on Rondo of Blood that came out on the Super Nintendo. The Super Nintendo couldn't do Rondo of Blood, but we got a game based on Rondo that the Super Nintendo could handle. And if
Right.
you don't compare it to Rondo, which is again the pinnacle in most opinions of the Classicvania style, then it's fine. It's another, Castlevania game on the Super Nintendo. Like, you're still Richter, and it's got a lot of similar things, but it's also hard.
Yes. So remember what I said earlier about enjoying Super Castlevania 4? Not just because I could beat it, but because I enjoyed playing it, but it also felt like it was doable. X didn't feel doable. And maybe I just needed to get good, but it was taxing
Yeah,
and difficult.
it is very hard. And that's included on crap. Is that the Advanced Collection
Yes.
that has Dracula X?
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm looking it up right now.
Dirk is in research mode.
Yeah, so if you ever want to play Dracula X without having to emulate it, it's in the Castlevania Advance Collection, which collects the 3 Game Boy Advance games. We're not there yet. So yeah, that is basically like the first era of Castlevania games. Like, Simon's Quest was a little weird, but it was still an 8-bit game, so it gets lumped in with it. But they're all, and there's Castlevania Legends, which was the 3rd Game Boy game. I guess we'll shoehorn in with those.
I'd never played that one, so I can't really speak to it.
It's okay. I played it some for the you play as, oh crap, what's her name? Your first female protagonist. Well, main character. Your first female Belmont. What is her name? Sonia. There we go. And she's wearing like thigh highs, which, That's always hot. But she's a Game Boy game, and it's set in the year 1450, but it's no longer canon.
Oh, this one isn't canon.
Yeah, so nobody cares.
Again, I didn't play it, so
it's fine. It's not as bad as the first one, and not as brilliant as the second. So it's the middle of the road thing there.
it's the middle child, even though it came last.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that one kid that they're like, yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
So yeah, that's the first era of games, and then we get Symphony of the Night.
Yeah, and I like how, for those that were listening, you kind of name dropped it earlier because you're talking about the collection. Symphony of the Night is infamous.
I think that's the wrong word.
Very much the wrong word.
Yeah.
Okay,
Infamous
is-
implies bad.
it is really well known
There you
and
go.
highly regarded. I have never played it. I very much want to play it.
Yeah. I
but-
didn't play it until the Xbox 360 release. And it was so good.
I think I played it. I played it on the PS1,
Nice.
and it involved. I saw someone play it, and was like, "Oh man, that's really cool." I think it was my freshman year in college. And so I went to GameStop and I couldn't find a new copy, so it was a used one, and I bought it as quickly as I could get my hands on it. And that is the one Castlevania game I played
Nice.
that I actually spent a lot of quality time with.
So we haven't gotten to hear
I
too.
really enjoyed that.
We haven't gotten to hear too much from Dirk on some of these earlier titles. I haven't played Symphony of the Night. I know of it. I know about it. I've seen some videos. But why don't you tell us what it is that really makes this game unique and sets it apart from, especially the earlier games in the series?
Well, first it had a really cool soundtrack.
Yeah.
Like it really is just an amazing soundtrack the whole way through. As you kill creatures, numbers pop out of them, and it gives you experience, and so you play as Alucard. Which
The
is
same
different
one
than-
from Castlevania 3, because, there's only one Alucard.
Hmm.
But there were hundreds of years in the middle of that.
Yeah. And he shows up in the time of Richter Belmont, which Richter is what, 1700s?
Let's see, Richter, 1792 is Rondo, 1797 is Symphony, and Castlevania 3 was 1476. So yeah, just 300 years.
But yeah, you play as Alucard, and which means that he can turn into mist. That's what I usually used him for. Although there's other powers that he has as well. He doesn't have a whip. He has a sword. Oh, and that was the other thing, is that he could summon a sword that would just start poking things on screen, while you kind of were like, I'm not going to attack it. I'm going to let my giant sword do the work for me.
Like you do.
But you can, at the end of it, you can fight Richter, or, spoiler alerts for a very old game, you find out that he's being controlled, and actually you only beat half the game, because there's the inverted castle. And so At that point, you find out you now have to do the castle, but upside down, and find
So
out
you
that what
mentioned
Dracula is the final boss, if I remember correctly.
It's something like the Dracula. It's some sort of demon version of Dracula or something.
Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah.
So you sorry, I didn't want to interrupt,
No, you're
unlike
good.
usual. So you mentioned that you whack enemies and numbers pop out, and you can gain levels. Sounds like this game actually has RPG elements, which was
Yep.
something that was kind of present in two, but I don't believe there were actually levels in two. There are levels in this game, right? Like experience levels.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Dirk jumped right into the nitty gritty details. This one is the first of what we now know as the Metroidvanias, and this game is the
Yeah.
reason they're called Metroidvanias.
Yeah. Previous to this game, they were just Metroid games because the first Metroid game was a Metroidvania. It set the stage.
Yeah,
You explore different areas. You have kind of an open world, but you need certain upgrades to reach different areas. Um, and the areas are each one has kind of a distinct feel to it. Like in Metroid, I forget all the names of the different areas, but it's like Brinstar, and there's the
Norfair and all
magma
that. Yeah,
area. Yeah. So in here, it's the different areas of the castle, right? I haven't
Yeah, there's a
played it, but I imagine
coliseum
there's
and
like a kitchen, a dining room. I must be hungry. Like a bedroom sort of stuff. Different areas of the castle, right?
hmm
So
yeah, and the game starts by replaying the end of Rondo of Blood, which I always thought was really cool. Like at the time, I didn't know it was the end of Rondo of Blood, but I think the game starts with Richter at the base of the big ass stairs that go up to Dracula's throne room.
yeah,
Yep.
the keep, which I love that they've continued to use that image of the keep. It's very consistent in a lot of the games, and to me, maybe someone else might consider that to be tired, but I love the the symbolism of it. And isn't Symphony where we get that so lovable voice acting?
Oh yeah, die,
And
Die,
monster!
you monster.
You don't belong in
Yes.
this world.
What is a
um,
man?
it's also one of the ones where you start off when you start off as Alucard, you start off OP. You know, like when
But don't
you
you
play a game where like you have been spending so much time that your character just like looks at enemies and the enemies burst into flames. Alucard starts off that way, and then I think Death rolls in and just says, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna steal all your powers," and he pulls all the experience and power out of Alucard, and so that's when you start off at the lowest level and
Yeah,
have to
he
work your way
pulls
up.
a the way I always thought of it is, and again, Metroid, he pulls a Samus Aran, where at the beginning of every Metroid game, you're back to zero. I think in
hmm
Prime, they even Metroid Prime, they even have you start OP, and then your armor is damaged at the end of the first level, so you have to repair all the functions. So,
Yeah, so you get a taste of what the gameplay will be like later.
yeah,
Like you get to run through
I like how
the initial like entryway that you go through in the first Castlevania game, and then not far and kill a few giant wolf things in one hit. And you're like, yeah, and then Death is like, nope, and then you go, oh, and now
I
you're at
like how this is
level
such a
stupid, and you have to run around and
yeah.
punch things to get more levels and stat increases and find new gear and blah blah blah. And like
I,
it was a straight up like RPG. Like Dirk said, he could use a sword. He can use all kinds of weapons in Symphony of the Night, depending on what you find and equip. So nowadays it would be called like that would be part of an action RPG.
okay. And again, much like Metroid, there's a map you're filling out, right?
Oh yeah, and it looks exactly like the map in Super Metroid.
Yeah.
Like black
hey,
and blue
again,
with dots. Yup.
Does it have save points in there and like
Oh,
areas
yeah.
where you can move between them? Yeah. So, hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But this was really the beginning of an era because this was the Metroid game for Castlevania. This was the first this was the first Metroidvania, right? It was not the last.
Yeah, this is
This was
where
not like
Koji Igarashi joined the team, and he was one of the programmers and one of the writers for this game. And nowadays he's just known as Iga. And this type of game is called an Igavania. So he's sort of integral to the series, which is, now he doesn't work for Konami anymore, and he did the Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, which is a giant Castlevania with the serial numbers filed off. Which is also excellent, and I highly recommend. It's still getting content added, like, just this year. It's insane. Like, for free. Not like new DLC. There's like, oh, we patched in a whole new playable character. Excuse me?
wait.
Where
Bloodstained.
does Castlevania 64 fall in all this?
In a deep
Oh,
hole.
well. So are we ready to move on from I mean Symphony of the Night is iconic. Are we ready to move on from it?
I guess. By the way, for anyone listening, we're not ignoring Mike. Mike had to step away to go move furniture.
Something like that.
That's what he said.
And I said that's random, and he said long story. So we're not ignoring Mike. He's just not here.
No. Yeah.
But I guess we're done with Symphony. It is the first, and some still consider the greatest of the Metroidvania games. So
it is definitely the one where as soon as Konami or whomever on Steam is like, okay, we're gonna put Symphony of the Night, on Steam, it'll be just a standalone game and everything, and it'll be the meme of me as Fry going, "Shut up and take my money."
Oh yeah, yeah. If the Requiem collection ever hits Steam, I'm buying that day one, full price.
Yeah.
I don't buy games full price.
Symphony of the Night came out in America in 1997.
Yep.
A lot of these releases are every year or every other year. Super came out in 91. Rondo of Blood came out in 93. Bloodlines 94, 95. Symphony in 97. And then 2 years later, we got
2 games.
Castlevania.
2 games for the same system.
Yeah. So I played both of these. And
really?
I'm going to say...
I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. No. I'm going to say straight up Legacy of Darkness. So Castlevania, which is just basically Castlevania 64, came out earlier in the year, and then they released Legacy of Darkness. They are very similar, and in fact, you can tell they basically just use the same map, same coding, everything. But Legacy of whereas Castlevania 64 had 2 main playable characters, and you chose one at the beginning. It's kind of like how, as Chu was saying with Resident Evil, you choose Claire or, Jill or Chris.
Yeah.
This one, you picked, it was either the dude, I don't
Reinhard
know
Schneider or...
Reinhard Schneider, yeah.
Crap, what's her name?
Or the Magic Girl.
Is it Carrie?
Maybe. Yeah, I think it might be.
Here we
you
go.
think I'd remember
Carrie
that? 'Cause my wife's
Fernandez,
name
a
is
young orphan gifted with magic powers, or Reinhard Schneider, the whip-wielding heir to the Belmont clan.
Yeah. And each one had their paths through the castle. And yes, once you complete it with one, if you then played with the other one, decisions you made from the first one could impact the second one.
Oh, that's
And
cool.
different areas would open up. Uh, I want to get to what worked and what didn't work with this game in just a second. But then later in the year, they released Legacy of Darkness, and the main character was a werewolf, and his name was Corn
Cornell.
something. Cornwall. What's that?
Cornell.
Cornell? Yeah. And it was just a better game.
Well, it was
And at a
essentially
certain
like, if I remember correctly, it contained. Hey, Mike's back. Hey, Mike, did you ever play Symphony of the Night?
No, missed it.
All right, that's enough from Mike.
did you ever play Castlevania 64?
No, I was being.
You missed it?
I wasn't exaggerating when I said it was just the 2 TS games that I played.
Okay. Um
But yeah, if I
But-
remember correctly, I think that Legacy of Darkness contains most of the first game in it.
that's what I was gonna say. Is so when you beat the game with Cornell, you unlock the ability to play through Reinhardt and Carrie's paths. Plus, I think a fourth guy, a paladin, who, spoiler for a very old game from 1999, I think was an NPC you could rescue as Cornell, and later comes back to the castle as like more of a grown up and is not there to beat Dracula, but is basically there to free other people. And it's just a better game. And I
Yeah.
kind of just I think it would have been I think this part of the series would have been better received. I'm not a game developer. I could not do this. I can't code, but I think if they had just waited and just released Legacy of Darkness as Castlevania 64, would have been received so much better. I don't know how much they learned from the earlier release because again, they were so one right after the other, but apparently they learned something because going back to the first one, Castlevania 64, and I can say this as someone that's played it multiple times, is a hot mess.
Oh yeah.
I was so excited to get this game. I got this game. I'm like, it had been hyped up by Nintendo Power. It was a 3D game, and anyone that had played, I'm trying to remember if Ocarina of Time had come out, and I feel like it had. So you had seen a game series in Zelda that made the leap to 3D and did great. And you're like, wow, this is going to be awesome. I love Castlevania. First level, I'm like, these controls are horrible. These graphics are not great, even for a new system. I want to whip that guy. Why can I not? Why? Why? What? Ugh. And it, like Castlevania 2, it instituted a day-night thing where it actually had it just a timer, and parts of the game, especially toward the end, would depend on how long you took to get there. Side note, I don't always love that function in a game because it kind of punishes you for exploring. You might also say that it rewards you when you've been playing the game for a while and you can do more of a speed run, and I get that, but this was highly stressful, and there were parts of 64's layout that you had to be like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. So that felt a little bit like 2. But there's one level in particular, I think it's the alchemist's laboratory or something, where you have to put together a nitro compound for nitroglycerin. And once you've mixed the compound, if you jump, you die. If you hit something, you die. You have to go back downstairs to the basement and put it down there so you can blow up a section of the wall. You cannot run through this section. So, between hit detection being horrible, the weapons not working intuitively at all, um, the story was fine, but it needed a lot of polish, a lot of polish. And that's exactly what it got in Legacy of Darkness, which was much better.
Yeah.
I still don't think Legacy of Darkness was the best game, but it was way better and it was enjoyable.
Yeah, and I think
I've been
Legacy
talking
of Darkness used the RAM expansion to help make it less hideous, if I remember correctly.
That probably sounds right. Did anybody else play 64 or Legacy of Darkness?
Not till
I
my
played.
Or just me?
I played 64 long and it was rented. So, still back in the day when you could actually rent video games. And
Blockbuster.
I played it long enough to realize it's really difficult. I found it super difficult to, whenever you need to jump from one platform to another or do anything like that, to judge distances. And it was sort of the same thing with like Mario 64, where you're like, okay, I'm going to jump to this platform, and trying to judge distances real well. And you had to do a lot of trial and error to kind of figure out, okay, so if it's this far, okay, do a little bit more to finicky it. Castlevania just did not have that. 64 did not have that finicky. Okay, well, let me do a little bit of this, and I'll get used to this. It didn't. It just didn't have that.
The
And
camera
so
did not help you. Yeah.
Yeah, there was no shadow, like to say, okay, when you jump, there's a shadow. Your shadow's underneath you to be like, okay, this is where you are in reference to, like, objects below you. So you can be like, okay, so if I jump, okay, I need to go a little bit further, to land on this platform. No, there was nothing of that, and so I probably spent a good 15 or 20 minutes just trying to jump onto the first ledge.
That sounds about right.
And I finally got up there. I did a little bit of moving around and everything, and then I died, and then it sent me right back to the very beginning. And at that point, I was like, okay, I don't want to have to deal with this. This is a rented game. I didn't spend money on this. I think I'm good. And so that was my experience with it.
You played it long enough to know that you didn't want to play it.
Exactly.
That's kind of what renting is for.
Yeah.
So.
And I played it during my taste test stream, but because it's a Nintendo 64 game, and I was emulating it with a modern controller, like the controls just were god awful. Like in order to pick something up on the 64 controller, you'd press the down C button, but on a modern controller, that means you flick the right analog stick down, and it took me forever to figure that out. I'm like, why am I not picking this up when I run over it? Like, what am I missing? I had to go dig up the manual and be like, all right, what button corresponds to that? Oh, it's on the right stick. Oh, Jesus. Like, and
How long did you play the game? Just as long as you had to?
I played through. I know I fought the first giant skeleton thing.
That's the first level.
Yeah,
it was on a. It was on like a motorcycle, I think.
Something like that. Yeah, and I played for a while after that because there was a couple of platforming sections, like where you had to climb, like jump down on platforms down like a sheer cliff face. And then go across a river and climb back up the other side or something like that. And I think I died there several times and then finally made it all the way across and was running around. I never made it into the castle, I don't think. I opened a couple of gates, but then I switched over to Legacy of Darkness, where you start like as Cornell, who is a werewolf. I don't remember if we said that. But you start in the bowels of a ship, and you have to fight a bunch of dudes, and then climb your way out. And even though it was better, it was still a Nintendo 64 game, not by Nintendo. Because the Nintendo 64 was created to play Super Mario 64. Like, that's why that game is perfect in its controls. Yeah. Because the entire thing was built around being able to do exactly that. And Castlevania was built by third-party people who did not create the system, so yeah. But I eventually made it out of the ship, and there's some sort of boss that is like a ranged fight. Like, you've got to throw stuff at it or wait for it to get close and wail on it. And I died enough times where I was like, all right, this is stupid. Let's play the next game.
If you could beat that, it actually gets a lot better. But
oh, yeah, that's what I read. But I had, like, you know, another 18 games to play or something, and I didn't want to get too burned down. Or too burned out.
Or down.
Or down, yeah. Let's not burn me down either. I wish I had more positive things to say about these. They've both been struck from canon. Reinhardt and Cornell are no longer part of Castlevania canon. What's the other one? Castlevania Legends, the third one on the Game Boy. Is that all? And Dracula X doesn't count because it's just a different version of Rondo. So yeah, we didn't talk about way back the MSX game, which I think we're gonna have to split this into 2 episodes anyway.
I'm looking at the time.
Yeah, because we are all about Castlevania. So way back in 86, briefly, there's a game that looks like Castlevania 1 called Vampire Killer that came out on the MSX2. But the MSX2 couldn't scroll. So every room in that game is static. And so they redid like the game. It's not just Castlevania 1, but with non-scrolling screens. Like each screen or group of screens or whatever, like there are things hidden in blocks, and you can find keys to open doors, and you can find merchants to buy weapons or keys or something from. Like, it's a weird thing compared to all these others. But I've never played it because I don't have the capability at the moment to emulate an MSX2. And even if I did, there's only like 2 games I would want to play, and it's this one and like Metal Gear 2. So, But it is. You should look it up if you're at all interested in it. It's weird. And then Haunted Castle in '88 was the first arcade game, which we mentioned briefly. It's also in the the Anniversary Collection, and it's super hard. There are like 4 different ROMs for it, or maybe 3, and some of them are stupid hard, and some of them are just hard. But it's not great. Simon looks like he really has to poop. I love the walk cycle on all of these early games, by the way, because like in the first one, I always got the feeling that Simon had a limp. Something about his walk cycle looks like he's limping, which I always thought was cool because, you know, he's a vampire hunter, so he's probably got some injuries, you know. I don't think that was what they were going for. I think that's just how I interpreted his weird ass walk cycle. But in Haunted Castle, he really looks like he's holding in a massive Duke. And recently, the Dominus collection came out, which has the DS games and a remake of Haunted Castle called Haunted Castle Revisited, which I haven't played it yet, but from what I understand is really good compared to the original. Like, the graphics are updated and are less crappy. Simon no longer looks like he's about to take the Browns to the Super Bowl.
Drop a yeah.
Yeah. He's And it's just overall, prettier and more user friendly. So that's cool. So we've talked about
And
all the Classicvania games, the first two 3D games. Do we stop there?
we can. I will tell you, full disclosure, at this point, I won't have a whole lot more to say about the games because
Well, that's
this
okay
is
because the
kind
other
of
two
where
will.
my experience. Yeah, I just want to be clear about that. But we could stop here and maybe do a part two next week or whenever we want to come back to it. We haven't touched.
Yeah.
We've kind of talked about some of the media, not a whole lot. But we've
Oh,
talked
that's true.
about.
Do we want to hit the anime while we're here? The first one.
We can.
Yeah.
You're referring to the Netflix anime?
Yeah.
Sure.
Like,
It is like you said. It is loosely based on Castlevania 3,
yeah,
Dracula's
the
Curse.
first two seasons are absolutely based on Castlevania 3. The second two seasons, I'm not
Right.
entirely sure. It's got characters from later games,
Right.
like
The,
Hector and
like mini boss.
the Forges. Yeah.
yeah, the Forge Masters and Saint Germain
The f-
shows up in
Yeah.
I think Curse of Darkness, maybe.
I'm not sure what Saint Germain is from, so
Let's do a Control F for the word saint. Yeah, here we know. Where? I love it when I Control F on something and it shows me the first one. I click on go to the first one and it shows me the second one. There it is. Okay, let's see here. A loose adaptation of Saint Germain was added to the cast as well. But why is that the first time Saint Germain is listed? I'm on the Wikipedia page for Curse of Darkness, which was a PS2 game, which we'll get to, I guess, next time. So I guess he was from Curse of Darkness because it's mentioned here in the in other media section that a loose adaptation of Saint Germain
Right.
was added to the cast. And why would that be mentioned here unless he was from this game? So, haha! Learning!
yeah. The second two seasons 3 and 4 brought in. I think what they were doing was they were not ready to move on from Trevor yet. They want to continue his story.
Yeah.
So they
Which, I
but
mean,
they-
his
and they
story
took
does
liberties
continue.
with it.
He shows up in Curse of Darkness.
Okay.
So, like, he's got more going on past the Castlevania 3.
Okay. I did not know that.
Yeah. But so the first two seasons are... Well, the first season is Trevor and Sypha and Alucard eventually, getting together to form their little... I was going to say polycule, but some people might take me seriously. And then the second season is them actually getting to and taking down Dracula. And then the third season is like Fallout? Right? Don't they take him down at the end of the second season? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they take him. Yeah, and then the third
Spoilers,
season
they
is
beat
more
Dracula.
Like, they maybe only spoiler would be like when, but then the third season is kind of like the aftermath of that. Like there's still demons hanging around, and there's still the king of vampires is gone, but there's still lots of other ones. The story is really kind of fascinating in the first two seasons. It opens up with, Dracula falling in love with Lisa, and they have Alucard. And then Lisa is put to death by the church, especially some members of the church that don't like her healing people and say that science is
The devil.
witchcraft. So Dracula declares war on humanity and says, "In 1 year, I'm going to burn you all down." And in 1 year, he finds them celebrating the death of his wife, and he's like, "Okay, oh yeah, you're all going to die." But over the course of the 2 seasons, getting to some spoilers here, but the series has been out for a while. It's interesting. Some of his generals, including Carmilla, come to him, and they're a little bit like, some of them kind of sense that something else is wrong. Some of them are proposing like keeping humans around to use as food, and he outright rejects the idea. I kind of got the impression that Dracula in this series had absolutely no intent in leaving the vampires alive either. I think he intended to burn it all down, and he knew full well that the vampires would die out from a lack of food. And I think he just either didn't care or that was part of his goal as well. But that was my take. The only people he really seemed to respect were his two forge masters, and he was more honest with them than he was with some, and because they were human and they followed him anyway, and they both believed that humanity was evil, and they're like, well, screw it, you want to kill them all, great, let's do it. Um, so I always thought that was kind of fascinating that he was evil, but I don't think he was not intending to make demons and vampires the master race. I think he intended to burn the whole thing down, period. But that was just my take.
That was
So
the vibe I got too. He was depressed and sick of being alive and hated most of his vampire brood.
Yeah. So now that he's dead come season 3, you still have a lot of vampires that didn't die, like Carmilla, that still want to fulfill his conquest for their own reasons. And then season 4 with the finale of that, which I really hesitate to get into too much, but I absolutely loved what they did with the villains at the end of season 4. Just there was and the way that was handled and some of the foreshadowing was good, and it was a good end to Trevor's character along with Sypha. Um,
Is it bad that I have no memory of what happened at the end of 4?
well, then I won't spoil it for
Like
you.
I remember the very end, but I don't remember like the climax of the story. Like it's just not here.
Well, stuff they keep finding things along the way. It's like, oh, this, and then they randomly come across this thing and this thing, and it all comes together to help resolve the end of the season.
Yeah, I got
Having to do with
nothing.
his weapon, the weapon he ends up using.
Like season 1 was only like 6 episodes, and it was amazing. And season 2, like bloody tears started playing at the big confrontation at the castle on Alamos.
Yeah.
That words cannot describe how fully erect I was.
That was beautiful. The scene, I can't really comment on your, erection.
And then season 3 was such a slog that like everyone was like, season 4 is pretty good, and I'm like, I don't care. Like it took me so long to get through season 3 that I didn't even watch season 4 for months. And then I finally decided, oh yeah, I should probably finish this. And then it's a blur. Like I just don't remember much of it, and that's probably not good. I think a bunch of that's on me.
I liked it, but
I do remember when it was over. I remember going nice, like that was worth slogging through season 3, but it didn't stick for some reason. And again, that's almost certainly a me problem, not an issue with the show itself.
But I will say that that wrapped up Trevor's story, and I was like, okay, and I thought maybe they were done, and then they released Nocturne, and it was what's his name from Rondo,
Richter.
Richter, and I watched it and I liked it, but and I kind of alluded to this when we were discussing this before the show started, but I thought, yes, this is how you tell a good story and you can bring in new characters and not feel shackled by the old ones. Did anybody, this is going to feel really weird. Did anybody watch Glee?
What?
No.
I told you. Do you
Just
know what
no?
Glee was?
I mean,
Do
I
you
know
know
what
what
Glee
Glee-
is. I didn't
Okay,
watch
yeah.
Glee.
Oh,
Right. So, for those that are less than a bajillion years old like we are, Glee was a fairly popular show because it was a musical. And I think it hit at the right time that it felt fresh. And the setting was a high school, and it follows the kids in a Glee club. And the first 3 seasons, you watch basically one class of kids. And then at the end of season 3, they graduated. And I was like, that's great. And they even had a big send off for the main character. They made a big deal about her moving to New York and she's going to pursue Broadway and all that sort of stuff. And they started to introduce uh, just a little some of the new characters that were going to come into the next class. I'm like, yes. And at the very beginning of the 4th season, they made it clear, no, these are the characters everybody loves. So they were all back. And the couple new characters they had were immediately relegated to second class, like background characters within a couple episodes. And the show then kind of limped on for another couple seasons and still followed these people for a while. And I felt like it was such a wasted opportunity. I get, kind of like with comics, I get that nobody ever dies in comics because somebody's favorite character is the Flash. Somebody's favorite character is Namor. So for that person, the Flash and Namor are always going to come back. But it's tough when you see the same people, especially on a show like this, over and over and over again. And I felt like Glee had this great thing it could have done, and it didn't do it. And here with Castlevania, they could have been like, "Here's season 5 of Trevor. You know, he's having problems with Silpha, and Alucard is there to make sarcastic comments." And they didn't. They continued the story with new characters, and it worked.
Jumped forward several
So,
hundred years
yeah.
because it takes place during the French Revolution.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it gets a lot of the story, a lot of the history into that as well, like the issues between the nobility and um less affluent classes are really at the center of the conflict. So,
I think the words you were fishing for there was proletariat.
yes. I am always a fan of the Letariats.
Especially the professional ones.
Yep,
I hate you.
I know you do. And on that note, should we maybe pick up here next time?
That's terrible. Did either of you watch the show or either of the shows?
I haven't.
Dirk did.
yes, I've watched the Castlevania all 4 seasons, and I've also watched Nocturne. And as I point out to the guys, they recently said that the second season was going to be coming out soon, and I'm kind of looking forward to that.
Nice.
About this time in January. Yeah.
hmm
Oh, I guess before we leave the topic entirely, and I don't want to keep Dirk up too late, but I did promise I would bring in Captain N because Captain N technically had a depiction of Castlevania.
Yeah, Simon
For
Belmont
those
was
that
one of the main characters,
he was,
and I
um,
hated him.
everybody did.
He was a very
Honestly,
arrogant character.
he was fighting with the actual protagonist most of the time for the attention of the main female character. Yeah. So for those that once again are not a
Princess
bajillion years old,
Lana?
Princess Lana, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, Captain N, for those that are still wee babies, if you think of a stereotypical kid gets sucked into a video game world story, that is exactly what happens. It was part story and part commercial for Nintendo,
Yeah.
except much more commercial for Nintendo. Dude is at home playing a video game and gets sucked into his TV, and that transports him to the video world. And what the video world is literally there's a different area for every game you could play. So, um, Mother Brain is the central antagonist, and her area is the area known as Metroid. And then you can also go to Castlevania, which is essentially the haunted castle, and like there might be like a village outside or something. And I remember they called the count the count. They didn't use the D word. And then Kongland for
Well,
Donkey Kong and
it
stuff
was a
like
kid's
that.
cartoon. They're not going to call him a dildo.
I mean,
Wait, what
yeah,
D word?
I guess Dracula, but thank you. Um, but yeah, in the and Simon Belmont was one of the characters that was on the main hero team.
Yeah, so it was
And
Captain N and Princess Lana, who don't matter.
Kid Icarus.
And then there was
Yeah.
Kid Icarus, who added like Icarus to the end of every, like he called Kevin, Captain N's name is Kevin. He called him Kevinicus. And I always hated him. And then Simon was this egotistical, super vain, like he had a whip in one hand and a comb to run through his hair in the other.
Yeah. And often put his whip away to get out a mirror to check himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there was Mega Man, who had the most annoying
yeah.
voice and put the word mega in front of everything. Mega, wow. And he was green? That was weird.
He was green. He was green. I don't think he shot anything. I think he just kind of picked things up and threw them because he was mega strong. And
Wow.
I think, they wanted to be, parents groups at the time were very much tapping down. They were a political force, and they were trying to tap down on violent cartoons. That's why the Ninja Turtles never actually, cut anybody with their swords.
Yeah.
So I don't think he actually had an arm cannon. I think he just kind of threw people.
Was that everybody in the first season?
I think that was everybody. They added Game Boy later.
Yeah.
And then the antagonists were Mother Brain, King Hippo from Punch Out, and the Eggplant.
And yeah, the eggplant
Plant
wizard,
wizard.
from Kid Icarus.
Kid Icarus. With every vegetable and fruit pun you can dig up.
Yeah, it was.
And Mother Brain just was also incredibly annoying.
You thought Mega Man had the worst voice.
Oh man, I loved Mother Brain so much. Like Mother Brain was one of like the great over the top cartoon Saturday morning villains.
Yeah.
Like because everything, like she would scream at King Hippo and the eggplant like constantly. Everything was at full volume, and I just dug her so much.
Yeah. I liked the show, but I really think part of the appeal of the show is there really wasn't any competition. I liked video games, and this was a cartoon about video games. Boom.
Yeah, it was not good.
No. And the depiction of the Count, when we say those are the main characters, the Count showed up a couple times.
They went to a lot of worlds based on other games. Like this is where the story of Link and Zelda from the Zelda cartoon that was part of the Super Mario Brothers Super Show on Fridays. Monday through Thursday it was Mario, but on Friday it was Legend of Zelda. But this is where that story wrapped up. Like they got a couple episodes in Captain N that were actually really good. Weirdly.
Yeah, they They were better than some of the ones in the Zelda cartoon,
Yeah.
which I enjoyed, but were a bit over the top. The way
Oh,
that
the
they
Zelda
worked in
cartoon was
Captain N actually
about
worked really well.
the Zelda cartoon about like did me in.
What?
And
Excuse me, princess.
Oh, you didn't
So-
hate that at the time.
Yeah, you're right. I didn't. And then whenever I was like, "Oh man, I remember it being such a great show," and then you just listen to like 5 minutes, you're going, "I do not understand how I liked this as much as I
Eh.
did."
Yeah. At
You're-
the
you
time,
grew up
there always had to be a catchphrase. Always.
Yes.
And that's the one
yeah.
they landed on with poor Link. I don't think
Ugh.
Captain N had one, did he?
I don't think Captain N
Don't
did,
recall.
unless it was like you're playing with power or something. It was every character, and I don't think Lana did. I think it was every character around them. Because keep in mind, they
Mega
were the
wow.
self-insert characters. You saw yourself as Kevin or maybe Lana. You did not see yourself necessarily. You were buddying around with Mega Man.
Yeah. And kicking him downstairs. I mean, what? Also, you got to
I just
remember,
wanted
we're
to
very
mention-
old.
Yeah. Oh, I think I've said that a couple times. But I did want to bring that in since we were talking about other depictions of Castlevania.
Yeah.
But whereas the anime is actually largely true to the series, but just takes some creative and narrative differences to
Yeah.
tell a story. Because an anime where a solitary character whips bats for half an hour while grunting is probably not the most compelling.
It'd be like the worst
Um,
text-based game ever. You see a bat, whip bat. You whip the bat. Now you see a skeleton, whip skeleton. You whip the skeleton.
I
Now there's a giant
remember-
bat. Throw axe at giant bat. Oh, you heard it. Throw another axe at giant bat. Oh, you defeated the giant bat.
I mean, yeah, and try to see that play out. I remember a couple years ago there was a concept for a Netflix Zelda going around, and it was fan made. But even as cool as it kind of looked, I was like, Zelda is pretty much dungeon exploration. Unless you get anybody for him to talk to, or unless you do what Netflix did and like take liberties with the story, that's going to be tough to translate. But so where I was going was some Netflix, the anime, relatively true to the story. Captain N was basically, again, because it was half cartoon, half commercials for video games, wanted to make a goofy caricature of Castlevania. So that's what they did. So when I say it's Castlevania, it's with a big asterisk. It's Castlevania like.
Hey Brian, you remember
With the
earlier
count.
when I said the reason you never beat death is because you didn't know the cheese strategy?
Yeah.
De-infiltrator in the chat just just spelled it out.
Yeah,
You
I
see
see.
death. Holy
Yeah.
water, holy water, holy water, holy water. You have defeated death.
I like it. Yeah, I found that out thanks to YouTube many years later, and I think I had yet to then make it back to death, knowing that. I'd also
Holy water,
like to
holy water,
try
holy
to
water,
beat
holy
it without the cheese, but it's tough. It's tough. Too many sickles, and not like popsicles. Those would be good.
Too
Like
many
cutting
popsicles.
sickles. We got to put Dirk to bed.
I was gonna say, should we do some final thoughts and wrap this up then, gents?
Si, senor.
Yeah.
Ooh, you know what
All
I'm
right,
gonna
well-
do?
What?
I'm gonna remind people right now to go to patreon.com/themanapool and become a lifeguard. Help support the show. And, the streaming and all that. Cause hey, you remember all those odds and ends? The stuff we record before and after the show? I sort of fell behind on those because life got stupid. But I'm getting caught back up again. I've got half of the ones that are missing either posted or scheduled to be posted, with the other half I'm going to work on next week, or maybe later this week. Well, it's Thursday. There is no later this week. So yeah, you should totally go sign up for that. Clues always said about Monday Night Magic that the odds and ends were better than the show. And for Monday Night Magic, he was probably right. But but for this show, I think they're pretty equal. And also let me thank our mythic lifeguards in this order: Jason Doan, Kim Ho, Al, ALK Alters, Andrew Odie, Jake Jansons, Jason Kaus, Casey, Michael, Scuzzo, Team You Hellas Haru, and Violet Moon. Yay.
Oot.
Also, you should totally go over to BlueSky and follow me. Are you on BlueSky? You should get on BlueSky. It's like if Twitter wasn't run by a fascist.
Yay, not being on Twitter.
Right? But okay. So, Dirk, what you got?
I think the
Wait,
big thing...
Dirk!
Yes.
Do you have... I forget. Do you have a PS5?
I do not.
Okay, Dirk, I have just found out news a few minutes ago in the Discord. Are you ready? This is relevant to you. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is coming to PC in January.
Oh, really?
If this is to be believed, it says coming to PC on January 23rd. Which made me go...
Yeah, I think that's about right, because I want to say January or something last year was when it... or maybe it was December. It's been almost a year since Rebirth was exclusive for...
and it seems like they do the 1 year exclusivity, so...
Right. Yeah, I think that they realized that they missed out a lot with it. So I think with the third and final one, they are not going to do the Sony exclusivity thing, and they're just going to be like, we're releasing it to everybody.
I mean, I don't mind the Sony exclusivity, to be honest. It was the fact that then the Epic Game Store got it for a year, and I refused to give Epic any money ever. So I had to wait for 2 years to play. Son of a whore. But they didn't do the Epic exclusivity this time, so yay. Because Epic and Steam are both listed here on this little thing that JT Huffy, I think JT Huffy, Jay Spencer, somebody, I'm on streamer mode, so I can't see who it was. It just says Jay. But yay! That made
I'm wondering
me happy.
I'm wondering if that came out during the Game Awards, because aren't the Game Awards going on now?
Oh, are they? It's got Game Awards branding on it.
Then I think so.
Wait, are the Game Awards streaming right now?
I think they're going on now.
Oh, is that why nobody's been in here tonight?
Maybe.
It was JT Huffy. Okay, well, if you listen
them.
to this, JT Huffy, thank you. You made my night and probably some of Dirk's.
I think they're going on now. I don't ever watch them. I just wait for the trailers the next day. I'm okay with the games and the game developers getting recognized. I'm not really in it. Yeah. Not really a huge fan of award shows in particular.
Well, the Game Awards is it's mostly commercials with some awards thrown in. Like they'll show 20 minutes of commercials and then they'll give a well-respected developer like 30 seconds and then start playing the music to get them off the stage. I'm like, come on, man.
Hey, my dog just threw up. My final thought is, everybody have a great night. Go watch the movie game trailers. I know Dirk's trying to get out. I'm going to go clean this up. Good night, guys.
Night B. That's a hell of a way to end the show. And my dog threw up. Good night, everybody.
There we go.
Dirk, what in your house is thrown up?
Nobody so far, but
Oh, okay.
I did have to take the day off yesterday because for whatever reason, Leighton had this really bad rash on his leg, and it's not like the school called and they thought it was bed bugs, and Chelsea came to the house and like tore his room apart looking for any sign of bed bugs or anything, and we looked around and there was absolutely nothing.
Thank goodness.
But the rash is on his leg, and when I took him to the doctor yesterday to have them look at him, and they're like, "Yeah, this is not bed bugs. What it looks like is like a mosquito got into his pants and like just attacked his
just
leg.
went to town.
Just went to town.
Oh, that sucks.
And it's not like it couldn't be like an allergic reaction or anything like that because it would be over his whole body, but it's not. It's just his legs. So it was a dilemma, but that we were trying to just like, what could have done this? And the only conclusion is that something got into his pants, and either he had a reaction to whatever it was, or it was a bug in his pants that literally just ate him alive.
Oh.
So, but aside from that, he's doing much better. We got him some antihistamine stuff that's helping, and his room is a lot cleaner now because of all that. So, like, I went through and I literally took every toy out of his room, which means there are 2 containers full of Legos that are currently sitting that need to be put somewhere where he cannot have access to them, because I cannot tell you how many Legos I dug out of his room. Like, out of crevices that I'm going, why are there Legos here? Never mind. Dumb question. So, but at least it was confined to his room. But yeah, that was my final thought and final experience, I guess, for the night. And with that, I am heading off to bed, guys.
All right. Well, night, Zerk.
All right, night, everybody.
Well, Mike, you've said like 8 words this episode. How, what you got?
Nothing really. Like, yeah, I didn't play much of the Castlevania games that y'all were talking about, but I've also had stuff going on here at the house the whole day and evening. It's like unexpected stuff. Having to help deal with some furniture and other things. Coming from Ashley's sister's house as she rearranges some stuff and give some stuff to us and this, that, and the other thing.
Fair enough.
And
yeah,
besides
I issued a notice earlier. I was like, we're not ignoring Mike. He had to go.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know I was gone for a while. And besides that, we also need to pack and get ready to go down to Florida for a couple days for a birthday party for my granddad's 90th birthday. So yeah, busy last few days and future few days here in this house.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Besides that, in the past couple weeks, Ashley and I sat and watched both of the Inside Out movies, which she had seen the first one before and wanted to watch the second one, so she wanted to see the first one as a recap. And I had never seen either of them before. And they were really good. I'm glad I sat and watched them.
Yeah, I've still never seen those, and every time I say that, people give me the, oh, what? I'm like, I know. I don't have time to watch all the stuff I want to watch, much less all the stuff everybody thinks I should watch.
Yeah. They are good. The first one gives some really interesting things to think about, feelings and thoughts and memories and stuff.
And then the second one went woke.
No, the second one ramps it up even more with more complicated feelings.
That's what I said.
Yeah.
I mean, what?
And it's funny how the anxiety character that's introduced into, it's like not really a like antagonist, but definitely not a villain. Um, anyway, it's really neat.
Nice.
There's a scene near the end where I was, really sympathetic for anxiety, and of course, what was going on made me remember a lot of things that I've had to deal with growing up. Yeah, they're well worth watching. They're very entertaining.
Nice. I'll tell you what I have been watching, Mike, since the last time we spoke.
What's that?
2 more full series of Taskmaster.
Oh, good. I'm glad you're enjoying it.
I monstered through the season that had James A. Caster and Rod Gilbert
That was great.
on it, which was brilliant. And now I'm on the next series, which I think is 8, 9, which has nobody I recognize on it, and I'm still thoroughly digging it.
Oh yeah, they're still really good, even when people that I never heard of. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the first series that I've gotten to that I don't recognize any of the players. I'm like, nope, no idea who any of you people are. I hope this doesn't suck. Nope, it doesn't. You should all be watching Taskmaster. It's on YouTube. Like, officially, full-ass seasons. Sorry, series.
Yeah, officially on YouTube. And the first couple seasons are mostly PG-ified with censor bleeps and everything, but after a while they just stopped giving a damn for the YouTube uploads.
Yeah. I mean, it's BBC, 5, I think? Yeah, they don't care.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I didn't stop and think whether that marks a place where they might have changed channels.
Or maybe they're on Dave, I think, is a channel in Britain.
Yeah.
And I don't think Dave cares. The Dave channel. That's a thing. I'm not just being silly.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I highly recommend it. Just pick a season and start watching. If you start at the beginning, you'll get a few of the in-jokes, but there aren't that many, so...
No.
I think Alex Horne is one of the great, comedic figures working these days.
Oh yeah, that's great. He's the he's the creative force behind the series, and he wanted to be able to be part of the joke. Well, yeah, I'm explaining this to listeners. He wanted to be able to be a part of the jokes himself, so that's why he got someone else to be the Taskmaster. And the reason he got Greg Davies was because he wanted someone with an imposing and authoritative presence to be the Taskmaster.
I love Greg Davies. He is... Have you ever watched his stand-up special on Netflix, Mike?
Yeah. No, I've seen clips on YouTube. I haven't watched the whole thing that's on Netflix.
Oh, man, you got to watch it. Something that's called Magnificent Beast. And it's really good. But...
I believe.
Yeah, Alex Horne's... Just his reactions to things, whether they're planned or not. He's got such good deadpan. And so many just little funny things that a lot of people don't even catch, that I'm like...
Yes.
And when someone does manage to break through and make him actually giggle, it is amazing. So yeah, highly recommend that show if you can handle British sensibilities, which a lot, all of the podcast, not all, but 2 of the main podcasts I listen to are mostly British people.
Mm-hmm.
And I realize I read and watch a lot of British stuff, sort of incidentally, which is why I know who a lot of these people are on this show. So yeah, highly recommend. Other than that, I haven't really done anything different since we spoke. Renee's all moved in now. She lives here now.
Oh, great. Awesome.
So that's cool. Gonna have to work on something for nights when I'm doing the show, though, because holy crap. I shut the doors so, her, whatever she's watching wouldn't, be too loud and distract me. And the heat has just kicked on, and now I'm sweating to death. I'm also still wearing jeans, though. So that's probably...
I'm in a similar position right now in a closed room, and the heat just came on, and now it's very noticeable.
Yeah. Like, I'm still... usually I change into, jammies or whatnot before we do the show, but tonight I was like, let's sit down and do the thing. That was a mistake. But... yeah. So next episode, by the way, anyone still listening, we're going to cover the rest of the Castlevania games, and then we're going to get into when Castlevania bleeds into other games. Because just in recent memory... no dying. Just in recent memory, Castlevania has jumped into Dead Cells, Vampire Survivors, and... was it the multiplayer game? Crap. Oh no. What is the multiplayer game where everybody murders... one person is the murderer and like 5 people are the...
Among Us?
Do it?
Among Us?
No. Although, yeah, that too. But no. Okay, wait. I have this game. To Death. I feel so stupid because my brain has just fallen. Dead by Daylight. There we go. Wasn't there a Castlevania Dead by Daylight thing? Yeah!
Sounds like something you've told me before.
Yeah, Dead by Daylight has been going for freaking years now, and they've had so many like big horror crossovers like Chucky and Alien and Scream and Resident Evil and Hellraiser and like freaking Alan Wake, Dungeons and Dragons with Vecna and Castlevania. Like there's just a lot. So yeah, there was something Castlevania. I don't know what. I just remember seeing that because I own this game, even though I've only ever played it once. I was like, oh, okay. Anyway. So yeah, we're going to talk about stuff like that. In addition to the rest of the games, which are 2 more 3D games, an entire spin-off, all of the Game Boy Advance and DS games, and a few other things. So it'll be fun. I don't know if that'll be next week or just some point in the future. It'll depend on when everyone is available. So yeah, I guess that's that. Hey, come hang out on the streams sometime. I've been playing Tunic still. It's really good. And I did a stream of Forced Showdown for the sole purpose of having it on Twitch so Casey could watch it while she's at work to see if she would like the game, because I was explaining it to her. And she's like, that sounds so up my alley. I was like, I'll do a stream of it so you can check it out. So I did. And I got further than I ever had on my first attempt on that stream. I was so pleased with myself. I got all the way to the final boss. Had never faced that boss before. Had no idea what I was doing. Died. So pissed. It took me like an hour and 45 minutes or something to get all the way there. And then didn't know what I was doing. And by the time I worked it out, I didn't have enough health and I died. And I was like, oh. But I know I can do it now. It's a good feeling to make progress. I got like 3 new achievements on that stream or something. I was like, yeah. Anyway. So with that, we're going to be done now. Let us know your relationship to Castlevania. Like, what games have you played? Have you watched the show? Do you care at all? Or are you a filthy vampire? Mm-hmm. And with that, we'll be done. So, thank you all so very much for joining us, and don't let your dog throw up during a podcast.